Welcome to John Carter Stories. For 30 years, my son-in-law treated me like I was nothing. Daniel Rodriguez thought I was just a washed-up hairdresser running a dying salon in downtown Seattle. What Daniel didn't know, what nobody knew, was that for 3 decades I've been dismantling criminal empires with Federal Bureau of Investigation. 5 hours after he publicly humiliated me at his victory gala, the director of the FBI walked into that fancy celebration with a presidential commendation and an urgent request for my immediate return to consultation. Every single person in that room watched it happen. The governor for federal judges, and yes, the crime lord whose nephew Daniel had just prosecuted using evidence I had gathered 22 years ago. Daniel thought he was mocking a failure. Instead, he destroyed everything he'd ever worked for. For years, for long years of listening to him tell people I trimmed hair for minimum wage. For years of watching my precious daughter make excuses for how her husband treated me. For years of biting my tongue while he paraded his superiority in front of anyone who would listen. He never asked the right questions. Not once. That celebration night, Daniel made his fatal mistake. He decided to announce his contempt for me publicly, in front of 250 of the most powerful people in Seattle. The FBI director confirmed my classified service record right there, in front of everyone. He revealed my role in bringing down the Moretti crime family. He mentioned the undercover operation that saved 19 federal witnesses from execution. Daniel's entire world, it just collapsed. Right there, in real time. Let me tell you what really happens when an arrogant prosecutor discovers he's been insulting a legend in his own field. A man who literally wrote the handbook on organized crime infiltration. You've probably dealt with people like Daniel. People who measure your worth by your salary, your job title, your zip code. People who think a law degree makes them better than everyone else. People who've never had to prove themselves where it actually matters. This story? This one's for you. Please subscribe and like this video, and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Now, let me show you how 3 decades of undercover work came crashing out of the shadows, and how one arrogant man learned that silence isn't the same thing as weakness. The disrespect didn't start at the celebration, though. Oh no, it began 4 years ago, on the day Daniel Rodriguez married my daughter Sarah. I was so proud of Sarah, criminal defense attorney, brilliant mind, compassionate heart, making serious money at one of Seattle's top firms. But Daniel came from what he called legal royalty. His father was a retired appellate court judge. His mother served on the board of the University of Washington Law School. The Rodriguez family had been producing prosecutors, judges, and politicians for 4 generations. They had portraits in courthouses, buildings named after them. The very first time Daniel saw me in my stylish smock, sweeping hair clippings off the floor of my salon, his entire expression changed. I watched it happen. The respect just drained right out his eyes. "This is your father's business?" he asked Sarah, looking around my modest 1,500 square foot salon like he'd stepped in something unpleasant. "Riverside Hair Studio," I said, keeping my voice proud despite the look on his face. "Been running it for 13 years now." Daniel nodded slowly, the way you might acknowledge a child showing you a crayon drawing of a dog that looks more like a potato. Interesting career choice. My wife, Margaret, she tried so hard to smooth it over. Thomas had a long career before this. Daniel. The salon is really more of a retirement hobby. But Daniel had already made up his mind about who I was, what I was worth. At family dinners, he'd introduce me to his colleagues with this particular tone. "This is Sarah's father. He runs a hair salon on Riverside Drive." Always that pause. Always that subtle tilt of his head that suggested I was some kind of curiosity, an oddity, something to be quietly pitted. Have you ever had someone look right through you like you don't matter? Like your entire life's work means nothing because they can't see it? Drop a comment if you know that feeling. Resume story. The second incident. Oh God, that one happened at Daniel's promotion party last spring. He'd just been named Chief Deputy Prosecutor for King County. Huge deal. Massive career move. They held this elaborate celebration at the Columbia Tower Club. Very exclusive. Very expensive. Lots of important people. Daniel was holding court near the bar, surrounded by judges and senior prosecutors. When I walked up to get a drink, he didn't even lower his voice. My father-in-law couldn't quite make it through law school, he said, loud enough that I heard every word from 10 feet away. But he found his calling. Scissors instead of legal briefs, you know? Polite laughter rippled through his circle. I just kept walking. Ordered my club soda. Didn't react. Some people are meant to lead, Daniel continued, warming to his theme. Others are meant to serve. Both are necessary in society, I suppose. My daughter appeared at my elbow 2 minutes later, her face flushed red with embarrassment and anger. Dad, I'm so sorry. He's had too much to drink. He's stone cold sober. Sweetheart, I said quietly, this is who he is. She didn't argue. She couldn't, because we both knew I was right. The third incident was my breaking point. The moment I knew this couldn't continue. Daniel was preparing his closing argument for the Moretti case at our house. Vincent Moretti, nephew of the infamous crime family, charged with racketeering, extortion, and 3 counts of murder. The case that would define Daniel's entire career, make him a household name. He was pacing our living room like it was a courtroom, practicing his delivery. The evidence is absolutely overwhelming, he declared, gesturing dramatically. 25 years of surveillance records, witness testimony, financial documentation. This case practically prosecutes itself. I was sitting in my armchair, reading the newspaper. You know, I said quietly, not looking up, the Moretti family has a very long memory. You might want to request additional security. Daniel stopped mid-stride, turned to stare at me. Security advice from a hairdresser, he said. Not quite mocking, but close. Just an observation. Thomas, I appreciate the concern, truly. But I've been doing this for 17 years. I think I understand organized crime better than someone who gives haircuts for a living. Margaret put her hand on my arm. A warning. Not yet. The Morettas are different, I said, still focused on my newspaper. They're patient. They plan. They wait years for the right moment. Daniel actually laughed. Let me explain something about criminals. Thomas, they're not sophisticated masterminds like in the movies. They're thugs with money and lawyers. The real work happens in courtrooms, not in hair salons reading true crime novels. I went back to my newspaper. What Daniel didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that I'd spent 4 years undercover inside the Moretti organization in the late 90s. For years of my life, I'd gathered the evidence that put Vincent's uncle away for life. I'd worn a wire to family weddings, sat through mob funerals, attended meetings where people were sentenced to death. I'd once talked my way out of an interrogation in a warehouse basement where they had a car battery, jumper cables, and very specific questions about who might be talking to federal agents. But my identity had been classified at the absolute highest levels. Even after retirement, the Bureau strongly recommended I maintain minimal visibility. There were still family members out there who would love, absolutely love, to know who really brought down their empire. So I cut hair. I swept floors. I listened to my son-in-law explain criminals to me. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Fremont, drove a 2019 Ford F-150 with visible rust spots, used coupons at Safeway, shopped at outlet malls. By every single measure Daniel Rodriguez cared about, I was exactly what he thought I was, a failure who'd never amounted to anything. What he didn't understand was that I chose this life. After 3 decades of looking over my shoulder every second, sleeping with a gun under my pillow, watching informants die because someone talked too much, watching families get torn apart. I wanted simple. I desperately wanted simple. I wanted to hold scissors instead of weapons. I wanted customers who told me about their grandchildren instead of their criminal enterprises. I wanted to go to bed without wondering if tonight was the night someone figured out who I really was. But simple comes with a price that nobody tells you about. People judge what they can see. They don't notice the scars under your shirt. They don't ask about the commendations locked in a safety deposit box. They definitely don't recognize the significance of encrypted phones that ring at 4 a.m. Daniel saw a 65-year-old man in a stylish smock making $18 an hour plus tips. He had absolutely no idea he was looking at someone who'd received the FBI Medal of Valor, someone who prevented the assassination of a federal appeals court judge in 2004, someone whose testimony had put 43 people behind bars for a combined 870 years. But that was all about to change. Because on the night of his grand victory celebration, my classified past and Daniel's public arrogance were about to collide in the most spectacular way possible. And 250 of Seattle's most powerful people were going to witness every single second of it. You won't believe what happened when the FBI director walked into that celebration. The look on Daniel's face. Oh my God, it was priceless. Stay with me for part 2. The stakes here weren't just about hurt feelings or wounded pride. This situation was absolutely tearing my family apart at the seams. Sarah was trapped in the middle, desperately trying to keep peace between her husband and her father. I watched her lose sleep over it, watched her cancel our weekly coffee dates, our Sunday dinners, anything that might force her to navigate the tension between us. Dad, she asked me one evening at the salon, her voice small and tired. Maybe you could just explain your background to Daniel? Tell him about your past. Sweetheart, I said gently, some things are classified for very good reasons. But he thinks you're just, She couldn't even finish the sentence. Her silence told me everything I needed to know. The family pressure was crushing her. Daniel wanted a celebration that would cement his reputation in Seattle's legal community. $350,000 at the Four Seasons Hotel's rooftop venue. This wasn't just showing off. This was Daniel's way of announcing himself to Seattle's power structure as a force to be reckoned with. Sarah was paying for half of it. Their joint savings account, completely depleted. Credit cards maxed out. She'd even taken out a personal loan. We could have a smaller celebration, she suggested to Daniel one night when I was visiting. Something more intimate? Absolutely not, Daniel said, not even looking up from his laptop. My family has standards, Sarah. We're not having some backyard barbecue because your father can't afford to contribute properly. The truth? Ha ha ha. I could have written a check for the entire celebration without even touching my real accounts, without making a dent in my finances. But those accounts were tied to my classified pension, my consulting fees, my investment funds built over 30 years of federal service. Opening them meant opening questions I wasn't ready to answer, questions that could put people at risk. So I contributed what a hairdresser could afford, $400, money that came from exactly where Daniel thought it came from. He made absolutely certain everyone knew about it. Thomas gave us his little contribution, he told his mother during the planning meetings, just loud enough for me to hear. Every bit helps, I suppose. The real stakes went so much deeper than money, though this was about identity, about family, about what happens when someone you love chooses pride over truth, status over character. Margaret was furious with me. 30 years, Thomas. 30 years you've kept quiet about everything you did. How long are you going to let him treat you like this? Until it threatens Sarah's happiness. It's already threatening Sarah's happiness. Look at her. She was right. Sarah had started avoiding family gatherings entirely. When she did show up, she looked exhausted, hollowed out, like she was fighting a war on two fronts and losing both battles. Daniel, meanwhile, was getting bolder, more aggressive with his contempt. He started making comments in front of Sarah's colleagues at her firm. Thomas runs a hair salon downtown. Honest work, you know? Always with that pause. Always with that tone suggesting honest work was a consolation prize for people who couldn't achieve anything better. Have you ever watched someone you love get caught between loyalty to family and loyalty to their partner? It's heartbreaking. Comment below if you've been there. Resume story. But the real breaking point came 3 weeks before the celebration. Sarah called me at 11 at night, late enough that I knew something was seriously wrong. Dad. Her voice was shaking, almost crying. What happened, sweetheart? Daniel is suggesting you shouldn't come to the celebration. My blood went cold. What? He says you'll embarrass him in front of the governor and the federal judges. He wants to seat you at a back table near the catering staff, away from the main area where people can see you. I felt something settle in my chest, something cold and final. What did you tell him? I told him absolutely not, that you're my father, that you'll sit at the family table or I'll cancel the whole thing. Her voice cracked. We had a huge fight about it. That's when I realized the stakes had fundamentally changed. This wasn't about my pride anymore. This was about my daughter's marriage, her future, her sense of self-worth. Daniel was using my perceived failure as leverage to control Sarah. If he could make her ashamed of her father, he could control how she saw herself, control what she thought she deserved. I had two choices: keep playing the humble hairdresser and watch my daughter's marriage turn into a slow-motion power struggle where she always lost, or reveal enough truth to level the playing field. But there was a third option I hadn't considered. What if Daniel revealed his true character so publicly, so dramatically, that the choice was made for me? What if I just waited, let him show everyone exactly who he was? The celebration was scheduled for March 22nd at the Four Seasons rooftop. 250 guests, including federal judges, the governor, state senators, and, oh, this was beautiful, 3 people who literally owed their lives to operations I'd personally led. Daniel had spent months planning the perfect stage to showcase his triumph over the Moretti family. He had no idea he was about to perform on a stage where some audience members knew exactly who I really was. Sarah, I said finally, tell Daniel I'll be there. Front table, family seating, and I'll be bringing a guest. Who? Your mother deserves to see this. Because Margaret had kept my secrets for 30 years. She watched me come home with broken ribs I couldn't explain, take phone calls I couldn't discuss, disappear for months at a time on assignments that officially never happened. She'd earned the right to watch Daniel Rodriguez learn what happens when you mistake quiet service for weakness. The celebration was 3 weeks away. Daniel was about to get the public showcase he'd always wanted. He just didn't know what kind of show it was going to be. 4 days before the celebration, Daniel's mask finally slipped completely off. We were at a pre-celebration dinner at Canlis. 60 close family and friends around elegant tables overlooking Lake Union. Daniel stood up to make a toast, holding his wine glass like a trophy. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, he began, his voice carrying that practiced courtroom authority. This weekend represents everything our family values: excellence, achievement, legacy. He looked toward his parents' table, where his father, Judge Roberto Rodriguez, nodded with obvious pride. Saturday night, I'll be celebrating the biggest conviction of my career. The Moretti case proves that justice, real justice, always prevails. Then his eyes found me across the room. We believe in surrounding ourselves with people who inspire us to reach higher. People who understand that success isn't luck or accident. It's a choice. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Daniel's mother, Isabella Rodriguez, leaned toward Margaret. What does Thomas do again, dear? He owns a hair salon, Margaret said evenly. Oh! Isabella's entire tone shifted. How quaint. But Daniel wasn't finished. Oh no, some people are content with simple lives, he said, still looking directly at me. There's nothing wrong with that. Someone has to cut hair and sweep floors and serve. A few guests laughed uncomfortably. Sarah's face went bright red. Daniel, she whispered urgently. Stop. What? I'm just saying everyone has their place in society. Some people change the world. Others make small talk with customers about sports and weather. That's when I stood up. The entire room went silent. Daniel looked genuinely surprised. He wasn't used to me responding publicly. Wasn't used to me doing anything except quietly absorbing his contempt. May I asked, gesturing toward my water glass. Daniel couldn't say no without looking petty in front of everyone. Of course, Thomas. I lifted my glass. To understanding that justice comes in many forms. Some people prosecute criminals in courtrooms. Others work in the shadows, often for decades, doing things that can never be discussed publicly. Both matter. Both serve. I took a sip and sat down. Daniel's confidence faltered for just a second, but he recovered quickly. Exactly. Everyone contributes what they can. But something had shifted in the room. I'd drawn a line, and he'd felt it. After dinner, I heard him corner Sarah in the hallway. Your father embarrassed me back there. He made a toast, Daniel, just like you did. He made a point, in front of my parents, in front of judges and prosecutors. I was standing close enough to hear every word. Daniel, he's my father. He's a hairdresser. Sarah, my family has prosecuted cases that changed this country. We don't need lectures about justice from someone who trims sideburns for tips. That's enough, Sarah said, her voice breaking. Is it? Because Saturday, in front of everyone who matters in this city, your father is going to sit at our family table. Do you understand what that says about us? About our judgment? It says we're family. It says you're not serious about your future in this city. About our future. I stepped around the corner. Both of them froze. Problem? I asked quietly. Daniel's face flushed. We were just discussing seating arrangements. I heard. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The air felt thick, heavy with things unsaid. Thomas. Daniel said finally, try to recover composure. I hope you understand. This celebration is extremely important to my career. I understand completely. Good, because Saturday, there will be some very influential people there. Federal judges, the governor, media coverage. First impressions matter tremendously. They certainly do. Daniel studied my face, searching for anger or hurt, anything he could use or dismiss. But I kept my expression completely neutral. I'm sure you'll represent the family appropriately, he said. I always do. As he walked away, I heard him whisper to Sarah. We'll discuss this later, privately. The morning of the celebration, everything started unraveling for Daniel. Strange phone calls, federal agents showing up, and a letter that would change everything. You need to hear what happened next in part 3. The morning of the celebration, strange things started happening. Things that made Daniel's carefully controlled world begin to crack at the edges. First, there was a phone call. I was getting coffee in the hotel lobby when my encrypted phone rang, the one with the bureau seal programmed into the lock screen. Brooks. Thomas. It's Patterson. We need to talk. Director James Patterson, my former partner from the Seattle field office, now running the entire FBI. Daniel was standing about 20 feet away, close enough to notice when my entire posture changed. Not today, Jim. Family event. That's exactly why we need to talk. Check your secure email in the next hour. I hung up and turned around. Daniel was staring at the phone in my hand. Interesting device for a hairdresser, he said, walking closer. Very official looking. Work phone. Customer appointments. Hairdressers have encrypted phones now. Everyone has smartphones these days, Daniel. But I could see his mind working. Hairdressers don't get calls that make them use first names with people who sound like senior government officials. The second thing happened during the venue walkthrough. We were checking final details when 2 men in dark suits approached me. Both had earpieces. Both had that unmistakable federal agent posture. Excuse me, are you Thomas Brooks? Daniels had whipped around so fast, I thought he'd hurt his neck. One of the men held up credentials. Agent Williams, FBI Seattle Field Office. We need to verify your attendance tonight for updated security protocols. Security protocols for what? Daniel demanded, stepping closer. Agent Williams looked at him, then back at me. Sir, we just need confirmation of your current residence for our records. I gave them my Fremont apartment address. The agents nodded and walked away. Daniel grabbed my arm the second they were out of earshot. Thomas, what the hell was that about? No idea. Maybe something about the neighborhood. FBI agents don't verify hairdressers' addresses for security protocols. You'd be surprised what the government tracks these days. But his suspicion was growing. I could see it in his eyes. The wheels turning. The third thing was a delivery. A hotel courier brought a sealed envelope to my room. Daniel happened to be there, going over some last-minute seating chart with Sarah. The letterhead made his eyes go wide. Office of the Director, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Washington, D.C. FBI Director Correspondence, Daniel said, his voice going up an octave. Thomas, what is going on? Probably retirement fund paperwork. Government bureaucracy. That says Office of the Director. All federal mail looks official, Daniel. I took the envelope and set it aside without opening it. Daniel was practically vibrating with frustration. Open it. It's private. Thomas, if you're in some kind of legal trouble, I'm not in trouble. Then what is it? I looked at him for a long moment. Daniel, some things in life are more complicated than they appear. What's that supposed to mean? Before I could answer, Margaret walked in. Thomas, we need to talk. She saw the envelope, saw the FBI letterhead. Privately, Daniel looked between us, his face reddening. This is ridiculous. It's my celebration, and everyone's acting like there's some massive conspiracy. Margaret looked at the letter, then at me, then at Daniel. Some secrets are worth keeping. What secrets? He's a hairdresser. Is he? Margaret asked quietly. Daniel stared at her. What do you mean, is he? Maybe you should ask him about his Medal of Valor, or his classified service record, or why the FBI director sends him personal correspondence. Daniel's face went completely pale. I don't understand. You will, Margaret said, very, very soon. Can you imagine realizing you've been wrong about someone for years? That the person you've been mocking is actually someone extraordinary? Keep watching. This gets intense. The celebration started smoothly enough. For the first 2 hours, everything was actually perfect. Daniel looked distinguished in his custom-tailored suit. Sarah was radiant, smiling at his side despite everything. The Four Seasons rooftop had been transformed into something from a luxury magazine spread. White roses everywhere, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet. 250 of Seattle's most influential people filled the space. I spotted familiar faces in the crowd. Faces Daniel didn't know I recognized. Federal Judge Catherine Morrison, who presided over trials based on evidence I'd personally gathered over years of undercover work. FBI Deputy Director Sarah Chun, no relation to Daniel, who'd worked directly with me on the Moretti operation. Governor David Richardson, whose life I'd saved during an assassination attempt in 2009 that was never made public, never reported, classified at the highest levels. They all knew me, by reputation, if not personally. Daniel had no idea. None at all. The trouble started during cocktail hour. Daniel was introducing his parents to political donors when he spotted me talking to a distinguished older gentleman in an expensive navy suit. Excuse me, Daniel said, approaching us. I don't think we've been introduced. The man nodded politely. Robert Fitzgerald, Department of Justice. Daniel's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Department of Justice meant federal power, connections, influence, everything he craved. How do you know Thomas? Daniel asked, already calculating how this connection could benefit him. Fitzgerald glanced at me. I gave him the slightest shake of my head. We've worked together on various security matters over the years, Fitzgerald said carefully. Oh, Daniel laughed. You're in the hair salon business too? Fitzgerald's eyebrows went up. Hair salon. Thomas owns a hair salon on Riverside Drive, Daniel explained, like he was clearing up an amusing misunderstanding. Fitzgerald looked at me, then back at Daniel. I see. After he walked away, Daniel grabbed my arm. That man clearly knows you from something more than cutting hair, Thomas. Maybe. What do you mean, maybe? Thomas, I'm tired of these games. What aren't you telling me? Nothing that matters tonight. But Daniel was getting agitated. The strange phone calls, the FBI agents, the director's mail, and now a Department of Justice official who obviously knew me from something significant. It does matter, he said, his voice rising. People are looking at you differently, like they know something I don't. You're imagining things. No, I'm not. Judge Morrison nodded at you when she arrived. The deputy director shook your hand, like you were old colleagues. What is going on? I stayed completely calm. Daniel, tonight is your night. Don't let paranoia ruin it. Paranoia? His voice was getting louder. People were starting to notice. I'm not paranoid. I'm confused. My father-in-law, who I thought was a simple hairdresser, is apparently known by half the federal establishment in Seattle. Sarah peered at his elbow, touching his arm gently. Is everything okay? No, everything is not okay. Daniel snapped. Your father has been lying to us. About who he is, what he does, Why FBI agents are verifying his attendance. Daniel, about everything, Sarah. Sarah looked at me. I just shrugged. He's having a difficult night, I said mildly. I am not having a difficult night. I'm having a complete breakdown, because nothing makes any sense anymore. That's when dinner was announced. We all took our seats at the head table. Daniel spent the entire meal shooting suspicious, almost frantic glances at me, while I calmly ate my filet mignon and made small talk with Margaret. When the time came for toast, Daniel's father went first. Traditional speech about justice, family, bright futures, all the expected things. Sarah spoke next, thanking everyone for coming and expressing how proud she was of Daniel's work. Then Daniel stood up, and everything, oh my God, everything just fell apart. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, he began. His voice was tight, with barely controlled emotion. The room immediately sensed something was wrong. This has been an educational evening, he continued. I've learned a lot about family, about honesty, about how well we really know the people closest to us. He looked directly at me. For 4 years, I've known my father-in-law as a humble hairdresser, someone who cuts hair on Riverside Drive for tips and small talk. Murmurs rippled through the room. This wasn't a typical celebration speech. But tonight, Daniel's voice was shaking now. I've discovered that FBI agents know his name. Department of Justice officials verify his identity. Federal judges treat him like an old friend. Sarah reached for his arm. Daniel, please stop. No. He pulled away. No. These people deserve to know who they're celebrating with. His voice echoed across the silent rooftop. Thomas Brooks, everyone, hairdresser, or whatever it is he really does. 250 pairs of eyes turned to me. Daniel raised a champagne glass, his hand visibly trembling. To honesty, to family relationships built on truth, to people who think they can hide who they really are forever. He was shaking, literally shaking with frustration and confusion and wounded pride. So here's my question, Thomas, he said, his voice cracking. What exactly do you do? Because it's clearly not just cutting hair. Are you FBI? Some kind of federal agent? What have you been hiding from your own family? Every eye in that room was on me. Sarah looked mortified. Her face was buried in her hands. Margaret sat perfectly still, watching, waiting. I stood up slowly. Daniel, I said quietly, you really want to do this? Here? Now? In front of everyone? Yes, I want the truth. The truth about what? About who you really are. I looked around the room. Judge Morrison was leaning forward. Deputy Director Chin had her phone out. Governor Richardson looked absolutely fascinated. You're absolutely sure? I asked. I'm sure. I nodded. Then I reached into my jacket pocket. Okay then. What happened next? The letter I pulled out, it destroyed Daniel's entire world in less than 60 seconds. Part 4 will blow your mind. Don't go anywhere. I pulled out the FBI director's letter, still sealed in its official envelope. The room fell so silent, you could hear people breathing. Marcus's face went from red to white in about 2 seconds. What is that? He whispered. You wanted the truth, I said, carefully breaking the official seal. Let's see what Director Patterson has to say. My hands were steady as I unfolded the letter. Daniel looked like he might pass out. I began reading aloud, my voice carrying across that silent rooftop. Special Agent Thomas James Brooks, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Organized Crime Division, retired. Daniel actually grabbed the table to keep from falling. Sarah's mouth dropped open. I could see tears forming in her eyes. I continued reading. By order of the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, you are hereby requested for immediate consultation regarding the Moretti family surveillance protocols and witness protection review. The room erupted in shocked whispers. People pulling out phones. Judges leaning toward each other. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, I read on, my voice stronger now, hereby acknowledges your 30 years of distinguished service, including your undercover infiltration of the Moretti crime syndicate from 1997 to 2001. Daniel made a sound like someone had punched him in the stomach. Your work prevented 6 assassination attempts on federal officials. You received the FBI Medal of Valor, the Attorney General's Award for Distinguished Service, and the Presidential Citizen's Medal. I paused, looking at Daniel. His face was completely drained of color. Furthermore, I continued, your evidence gathering during Operation Silent Justice directly resulted in 51 convictions, including the life sentence of Anthony Moretti in 2003. I folded the letter carefully. The room was absolutely silent. You asked who I really am, I said quietly. Special Agent Thomas Brooks, FBI Organized Crime Division, 30 years of service, Medal of Valor recipient for Operation Silent Justice. The man who built the case that put Vincent Moretti's uncle away for life. The same evidence, the exact same evidence, you just used to convict his nephew. The applause started slowly, then built, and built, until it was thunderous. People were standing up. Ha ha ha. Daniel looked like he was going to be sick. Judge Morrison stood up, her voice carrying across the rooftop. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the presence of a genuine legend. But I wasn't finished. Not quite. The letter also mentioned something else. I said, reaching into my other pocket. Daniel was gripping the table. So hard, I thought it might break. Director Patterson sends his personal regards. Jim and I worked together for 17 years in Seattle. He asked me to bring these tonight, in case anyone had questions about my service record. I pulled out my old FBI credentials and a worn metal case. The room gasped as I opened it. Inside, the Medal of Valor, the Presidential Citizen's Medal, both gleaming under the rooftop lights. But you said... Daniel could barely form words. You said you were... I said exactly what my cover required me to say. I replied calmly. For 30 years, my identity was protected at the absolute highest levels of government. Even after retirement, there were serious safety concerns. Some of the people I helped put away have very, very long memories. Sarah was openly crying now. Dad, is this all real? It's real, sweetheart. Daniel finally found his voice. You let me, for 4 years, you let me think. I let you think what you wanted to think. I let you show everyone exactly who you are when you believe you're safe to do it. That's when Deputy Director Chin approached our table. Agent Brooks, she said, her voice formal but warm. The evidence you gathered is still being used in active prosecutions today. The Moretti case your son-in-law just won, built entirely on your surveillance work from 2000. Daniel's face, oh God, all the blood just drained right out. What? He whispered. Chin nodded. The financial records, the witness testimony, the surveillance transcripts, all from Agent Brooks's 4 years undercover. You convicted Vincent Moretti using evidence his father-in-law nearly died gathering. One by one, people Daniel had spent years trying to impress began sharing how they knew me. Judge Morrison stepped forward. I presided over 14 cases built on Agent Brooks's investigations. He's responsible for more organized crime convictions than any other single agent in Bureau history. Governor Richardson approached next. Agent Brooks saved my life in 2009. An assassination attempt that was never made public. Classified at the highest levels. I owe him everything. Daniel watched in absolute horror as the same people he'd cultivated for years, federal judges, politicians, prosecutors, suddenly looked at me with profound respect. But you cut hair, he said weakly. You live in that apartment. You drive that old truck. I chose that life, I said, after 3 decades of looking over my shoulder every second, after watching people die, after living lies for so long I sometimes forgot what truth felt like. I wanted peace. I wanted simple. But the money, you only gave us $400 for celebration, because that's what a hairdresser could afford. I wasn't ready to explain where the rest came from. Robert Fitzgerald from DOJ appeared at my side. Agent Brooks, we have your consultation retainer authorization. $225,000 annually for ongoing advisory work, as specified in the director's request. Daniel saw the figure and made a sound like a dying animal, weeping almost. Additionally, Fitzgerald continued, The Bureau has authorized protective detail during your transition back to active consulting status. There are still credible threats from Moretti family associates. The full weight of what he'd done was finally hitting Daniel. He'd spent 4 years publicly humiliating someone who dedicated his entire life to putting away the exact criminals Daniel prosecuted for a living. "Wait," Daniel whispered. This can't be real." I pulled out my encrypted phone and dialed a number everyone in federal law enforcement knew by heart. It rang once. "Brooks." "Jim, it's Thomas. I'm at my son-in-law's celebration. Daniel here has some questions about my service record." I put the phone on speaker. Director James Patterson's voice filled that silent rooftop. "Good evening, everyone. This is Director James Patterson, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'm calling to confirm that Special Agent Thomas Brooks is one of the most decorated undercover operatives in Bureau history." Daniel was swaying on his feet, gripping the table. "Agent Brooks spent 4 years inside the Moretti crime organization," Patterson continued, his voice carrying that unmistakable authority. "His work prevented the assassination of a Supreme Court justice in 2005. He dismantled a $60 million money laundering operation. He provided evidence for 51 federal convictions." The room was completely silent except for Daniel's rapid, panicked breathing. He received the Medal of Valor for maintaining his cover despite being tortured for 8 hours when his identity was temporarily compromised. He completed his mission and extracted himself without revealing a single piece of classified information. Patterson paused. You could hear it in his voice, the respect, the weight of what he was saying. Agent Brooks chose early retirement for safety reasons and has been living under minimal cover since then. Many of our finest operatives choose humble occupations after classified service. Thomas chose to cut hair. After what he sacrificed for this country, I'd say he earned that right. I ended the call, looked at Daniel. "Any other questions about my background?" He was crying now, actually crying, his distinguished composure completely shattered. "I ruined everything," he whispered. "You revealed everything," I corrected gently. "There's a difference." The truth was finally out, not just about my service record, about what kind of person Daniel really was when he thought he was safe to show it. And 250 of Seattle's most powerful people had witnessed every single second of it. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Resume story. The immediate aftermath was devastating for Daniel. Within a week, the social dynamics of Seattle's legal community had completely shifted. The prosecutor who mocked a Medal of Valor recipient at his own celebration became a cautionary tale, a warning, a punchline. But the real consequences came from unexpected places. Judge Morrison called Sarah 4 days later. "I'm recusing myself from all cases involving the district attorney's office while Daniel is employed there. I can't maintain impartiality after what I witnessed." 4 other federal judges followed suit. The district attorney called Daniel into his office. "I'm not firing you, Daniel, but I am reassigning you to misdemeanor court. Traffic violations, small claims. Your judgment is in serious question, and I can't put you in front of judges who've lost all respect for you." Daniel's career, the one he'd spent 17 years building, was effectively over. His political ambitions evaporated overnight. The party leaders who'd been grooming him for higher office quietly withdrew their support. The video went viral. Someone had recorded the entire revelation. 2.3 million views in the first week. Daniel tried to control the narrative, release a statement. "I deeply regret my comments at our celebration. I was operating on incomplete information and made assumptions that proved catastrophically incorrect. I have nothing but profound respect for law enforcement heroes like my father-in-law, who sacrificed everything to keep this country safe. But the damage was irreversible. The consequences multiplied." His father, Judge Roberto Rodriguez, announced early retirement. "Family reasons," the press release said. His mother resigned from the University of Washington Law School board. "We can't have our name associated with this kind of behavior," she told Sarah privately. Daniel has embarrassed 4 generations of Rodriguez family legacy. What Sarah did next changed everything. And what I discovered about true happiness might surprise you. The conclusion in part 5 will leave you thinking. Sarah came to my salon on a Tuesday afternoon, 5 weeks after the celebration. Dad, I need talk. I put down my scissors. Sit down, sweetheart. She sat in the stylish chair, tears already streaming down her face. Weeping, it broke my heart to see her like this. I'm leaving him. Are you sure? He hasn't apologized. Not really. Not once. Her voice was shaking. He keeps saying he was embarrassed. That you should have told him. That none of this would have happened if you'd been honest from the beginning. So he's blaming me. He's blaming everyone except himself. And I can't do this anymore. Dad, I can't be married to someone who only respects people based on their job title or their bank account. I nodded slowly. What do you want to do? I want to file for divorce. I want to start over. I want to never, ever feel ashamed of my family again. Then that's what you'll do, and I'll support you every step of the way. Sarah looked around my modest salon. The worn chairs, the old mirrors, the smell of aftershave and hair products, the simple, honest space I'd built. Dad, why did you really choose this life? I thought about it carefully before answering. After 30 years of lies and violence and watching people die, I wanted truth, real truth. I wanted simple. I wanted customers who trusted me with something small, like their appearance, instead of something heavy like their lives or their secrets. Do you regret it? Any of it? Never. Not for a single second. Sarah stood up and hugged me. Oh! Held on tight like she used to when she was little. I'm so sorry I ever let him make me feel ashamed of you. You didn't know the whole story, sweetheart. I should have trusted what I did know, that you're the best man I've ever met. 9 months later, things had settled into a new kind of normal. Sarah's divorce was finalized. She moved into a beautiful apartment in Capitol Hill and was rebuilding her practice with focus on civil rights cases, fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Daniel had left Seattle entirely. Last I heard, he was working at a small firm in Phoenix, handling DUI cases and minor infractions. The Rodriguez family had scattered. Judge Roberto moved to San Diego. Isabella stopped attending any social functions. Director Patterson's consulting offer was real. I accepted a limited advisory role, reviewing cold cases from my era, training new undercover operatives, occasionally testifying in ongoing prosecutions. But I kept the salon. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I still opened at 7 in the morning, still swept the floors, still cut hair for whoever walked through that door. One of my regulars, a retired firefighter named Bill, asked me about it one day. Thomas, you're some kind of federal hero. Why are you still cutting hair? I thought about it while I trimmed his beard, because this is who I am now. The other stuff, that was a job, a duty. This is a life. This is peace. Sarah brought her new boyfriend to meet me at the salon one Saturday. Nice guy named Michael, high school history teacher, made $44,000 a year, drove a 12-year-old Honda. Mr. Brooks, Michael said, shaking my hand nervously. Sarah has told me a lot about you. Call me Thomas. And don't believe everything she says. Ha ha, she said, you're an American hero. I handed him a comb, gestured to a chair. She said, you're a good man who treats her right. That's infinitely more important. Michael relaxed immediately. As they were leaving, Sarah turned back. Dad. Yeah, sweetheart. Thank you for everything, for showing me what real character looks like. After they left, Margaret came in from the back room where she'd been watching. Any regrets? She asked. I looked around my salon. The worn chairs, the old mirrors, the photo on the wall, me and Director Patterson at my retirement ceremony, next to my stylist license. None. Not even about Daniel. Really? Daniel revealed who he was. That's not something I did to him. It's something he did to himself. And Sarah? Sarah learned what really matters. That's worth any price. Margaret kissed my cheek. 33 years, Thomas Brooks. 33 years of keeping your secrets. You've earned this peaceful retirement. I've earned exactly this, I said, looking around my modest lawn. A simple business on Riverside Drive, a wife who knows everything, a daughter who finally understands what actually matters in life. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to see the truth, not about hidden medals or classified missions, but about what really matters. Character, service, treating people with respect and dignity regardless of their job title or bank account. Marcus never learned that lesson, but Sarah did, and that made everything, every sacrifice, every quiet year, every moment of Daniel's contempt, absolutely worth it. I still run my salon, still cut hair, still make small talk about sports and weather and people's families. But now, when I look in the mirror, I see exactly who I am. Not a federal agent, not an undercover operative, not a decorated hero, just Thomas Brooks, husband, father, hairdresser, living the peaceful, honest life I earned. And that's more than enough. Final emotional beat. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever been judged unfairly, whether you've ever had to choose between revealing the truth and keeping the peace. Sometimes silence is strength. Sometimes patience is power. And sometimes, sometimes the best revenge is just living your truth and letting other people reveal themselves. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, your worth isn't defined by what people can see. It's defined by what you know about yourself. Stay strong, stay true, and never, ever let someone else's judgment determine your value.